First contact. The Zarkanian fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, their crystalline ships reflecting the distant sunlight like artificial stars. Supreme Commander Vexthor stood on the bridge of the flagship Stellar Dominance, his 4 eyes fixed on the holographic display of the third planet from the Sun. The blue marbles suspended in space seemed unremarkable, yet intelligence suggested it held the resources they desperately needed. Analysis complete, Supreme Commander, reported Science Officer Miratek, her tentacles dancing across the neural interface. The planet's surface is 71% covered in dihydrogen monoxide. Vexthor's outer membrane rippled with satisfaction. Their own world had long since depleted its water resources, forcing them to seek new planets to harvest. Perfect. Begin the invasion protocol. The Zarkanian civilization had conquered 17 worlds across 3 galaxies, their technological superiority making resistance futile. Their method was simple: establish orbital superiority, neutralize military threats, and extract resources. Earth would be no different. Or so they thought. The first sign that this invasion would be different came when they deployed their atmospheric processors. The massive machines, designed to analyze and modify planetary atmospheres, began reporting anomalous readings from Earth's oceans. Supreme Commander, Miratek called, her usual composed demeanor showing signs of concern. The chemical composition of Earth's oceans is far more complex than our initial scans indicated. We're detecting millions of organic compounds and unprecedented biodiversity. Vexthor dismissed her concerns. All primitive worlds have basic life forms. Proceed with the standard protocol. The invasion fleet deployed in perfect formation, 5,000 ships arranging themselves strategically around the planet. Earth's military response was predictably primitive, nuclear missiles and electromagnetic pulses that their shields easily deflected. However, when they began deploying their underwater extraction facilities, everything changed. The first facility, established in what humans called the Pacific Ocean, went offline within hours. The second, in the Atlantic, lasted barely 30 minutes. The third didn't even complete its initialization sequence. Supreme Commander. The emergency alert filled the bridge with pulsing red light. We've lost contact with all deep-sea facilities. Something is attacking them. Vexthor's membrane darkened with anger. Impossible. Show me the last transmission. The holographic display flickered to life, showing footage from the Pacific facility. At first, everything seemed normal, the massive structure extending from the surface down into the depths. Then something moved in the darkness. Something enormous. The camera caught a glimpse of what appeared to be an eye larger than their biggest ship, then tentacles that seemed to stretch for kilometers. The facility's reinforced walls, designed to withstand the pressure of a gas giant's atmosphere, crumpled like paper. By the Ancient Ones, Vexthor whispered. What is that? But that was just the beginning. Reports began flooding in from all sectors. Creatures that defied their understanding of biology were emerging from the depths. Giant squids with bodies larger than their destroyers, whales that generated sound waves capable of disrupting their shield harmonics, and swarms of microscopic organisms that could eat through their supposedly impenetrable hull material. The Zarkanians had prepared for resistance from the dominant species, humans, but they hadn't anticipated the ocean itself would fight back. Miratek's analysis became increasingly frantic. Supreme Commander, we're detecting life forms at every depth of the ocean. The pressure at the bottom of these trenches would crush our strongest vessels, yet there are creatures living there, thriving even. The biological diversity, it's beyond anything in our database. The situation deteriorated rapidly. Their ships, designed for space combat, proved woefully inadequate for underwater warfare. The ocean's residents seemed to view their extraction technology as an invasion of their territory, and they responded with devastating efficiency. Massive whales breached the surface to slam into their hovering ships, their enormous mass and momentum overwhelming shield systems calibrated for energy weapons. Schools of fish moved with impossible coordination, creating electromagnetic disturbances that interfered with their sensors. And deep beneath the waves, ancient creatures stirred, their movements generating currents that could pull even their largest ships under. Supreme Commander, Miratek's voice was barely a whisper. I've completed a comprehensive analysis of Earth's oceans. They contain more biodiversity than all 17 worlds we've conquered combined. The creatures here have evolved over millions of years to survive in conditions we can barely comprehend. The pressure differentials alone. Vexthor raised a hand to silence her. He was watching the tactical display, where another extraction facility was being torn apart by what appeared to be a pack of organisms humans called Orcus. These creatures displayed intelligence and coordination that rivaled their best military units. The humans, meanwhile, seemed almost amused. Their military forces had pulled back, apparently content to let their planet's natural defenses handle the situation. Their communication channels were filled with entertainment broadcasts about the alien invasion being thwarted by marine life. As Vexthor watched another ship disappear into the depths, dragged down by something with tentacles longer than their sensor range could track, he made a decision that would change the course of Zarkanian history. All ships, immediate withdrawal. Full retreat to safe distance. The bridge crew stared at him in shock. In 10,000 years of Zarkanian military history, no Supreme Commander had ever ordered a retreat. But Supreme Commander, his tactical officer protested, the humans are primitive. Their weapons can't penetrate our shields. The humans are not our problem, Vexthor replied, watching as another massive shape moved beneath the waves. We came seeking water, but we found something else entirely. These oceans, they're not just filled with water. They're filled with life we don't understand, life that has evolved in conditions we can't survive, life that sees us as nothing more than intruders in their domain. He turned to face his crew, his membrane now a deep shade of blue, the color of profound revelation. We thought we were invading a primitive world, but we've stumbled into something far more significant. Earth's oceans are not a resource to be harvested. They are a force of nature we are not prepared to contend with. As the Zarkanian fleet retreated to the safety of space, they continued to monitor the planet below. The creatures of the deep returned to their normal patterns, the disruption of the alien invasion already forgotten in the eternal rhythm of oceanic life. In the following cycles, the Zarkanian Science Council would extensively study the data gathered from Earth's oceans, leading to a revolutionary understanding of biological adaptation and ecosystem complexity. Their failed invasion had taught them a crucial lesson: true power didn't always lie in technological superiority or military might. Sometimes it lay in the patient evolution of life itself, in the endless dance of predator and prey, in the perfect adaptation to even the most extreme environments, and somewhere in the depths of Earth's oceans, ancient creatures continued their eternal patrol, unknowing and uncaring that they had just saved their planet from alien invasion. For them, it had been just another day in the endless cycle of life beneath the waves. The invasion that lasted less than a standard Earth day would forever change Zarkanian civilization. They had come seeking to conquer, only to find themselves humbled by the sheer magnitude and complexity of Earth's marine ecosystems. In the years that followed, they would return, not as conquerors, but as students, seeking to understand the incredible diversity of life that had evolved in Earth's oceans. As for Supreme Commander Vexthor, his decision to retreat would initially be met with criticism from the Zarkanian High Command. However, as the full scope of their discoveries about Earth's marine life became clear, he would be hailed as the commander who recognized when victory was impossible, and in doing so, opened up an entirely new chapter in Zarkanian scientific understanding. The next time they approached Earth, it would be with research vessels instead of warships, with scientific curiosity instead of conquest in mind. And the mysteries of Earth's oceans would continue to surprise and humble them for generations to come. In the end, the failed invasion served as a powerful reminder that in the vast expanse of space, true wonders often came not in the form of advanced technology or military might, but in the infinite complexity of life itself. The oceans of Earth had defeated them not with weapons or strategy, but simply by being what they had always been, an ecosystem of incredible diversity, complexity, and resilience, evolved over millions of years to thrive in conditions that even advanced alien civilizations found hostile. And deep beneath the waves, life went on, unaware of the profound impact it had just had on an alien civilization's understanding of the universe. The Deep Dive. 5 Earth years after the failed invasion, the Zarkanian research vessel, Oceanic Seeker, hovered silently above the Mariana Trench. Unlike the imposing warships of the invasion fleet, this vessel was designed for scientific exploration, its crystalline hull modified to withstand extreme pressures and its sensors calibrated for detailed biological analysis. Dr. Mira Tech, now chief xenobiologist of the Earth Studies Division, stood before the ship's council, presenting her proposal. The former science officer had dedicated the past 5 years to studying Earth's marine life, and what she was about to suggest would either make her career or end it. Distinguished colleagues, she began, her tentacles moving with measured precision, our surface studies have barely scratched the outer membrane of Earth's oceanic mysteries. I propose a direct intervention, a manned expedition to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. The council chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. No Zarkanian had ever attempted to descend into such depths. Their previous attempts at underwater facilities had ended in disaster. We've learned from our mistakes, Miratek continued. We're not here as conquerors this time, but as students. I've designed a new type of exploration pod, one that mimics the natural adaptations of deep-sea creatures. The holographic display showed her design, a biomechanical pod that looked more like a giant cephalopod than a traditional Zarkanian vessel. Its hull was composed of layers of flexible, pressure-resistant materials inspired by the shells of deep-sea mollusks. Instead of conventional propulsion, it used a system of artificial muscles and jet propulsion similar to those evolved by Earth's marine life. This is madness, objected Council Member Ziwaxtal. The pressure at those depths would compress our traditional ships into particles. Even if your creation survives, what do you hope to find? Miratek's outer membrane rippled with excitement. Something happened during the invasion that we never fully understood. Our sensors detected massive energy signatures from the deep trenches, patterns that suggested intelligence and organization beyond what we thought possible at such depths. I believe there's more to Earth's oceans than simply aggressive marine life. After hours of debate, the Council approved her expedition, though not without considerable reservations. 3 days later, Miratek found herself inside the biomimetic pod, preparing for descent. Remember, came the voice of Captain Kelvor through the neural link, at the first sign of serious trouble, activate the emergency ascent sequence. We're not losing our best xenobiologist to Earth's oceans. Miratek acknowledged the warning, but her 4 hearts were pounding with excitement as the pod was lowered into the water. The descent began slowly, allowing her to adjust to the increasing pressure. Through the pod's sensitive skin, she could feel the temperature dropping as she sank deeper into the abyss. At first, the waters around her teemed with familiar life forms, schools of fish, curious dolphins, and the occasional shark. But as she passed the 1,000-meter mark, the true wonders began to appear, creatures that seemed to defy physics swam past her pod, transparent animals with bodies that pulsed with bioluminescent light, fish with jaws that could unhinge to swallow prey larger than themselves, and gelatinous organisms that seemed to shift between solid and liquid states. Incredible, she whispered, her scientific instruments recording everything. The biodiversity here, it's as if evolution had complete freedom to experiment. At 5,000 meters, she encountered something unexpected. A group of creatures that her instruments identified as sperm whales were engaged in what appeared to be a coordinated hunting pattern. But there was something different about them, they seemed to be working in concert with smaller, unknown organisms that glowed with a strange blue light. Are you seeing this? She transmitted to the surface. The whales appear to have developed a symbiotic relationship with bioluminescent organisms. They're using them like living sonar arrays. But it was at 8,000 meters that everything changed. Her pod sensors detected a massive electromagnetic disturbance, similar to the ones that had disrupted their ships during the invasion. But this time, she was close enough to see its source. A vast network of bioluminescent filaments stretched through the water, connecting various deep-sea creatures in what appeared to be a living communication grid. Pulses of light and electrical signals moved through this network with clear purpose and pattern. By the ancient ones, Miratech breathed. It's a neural network. The entire ocean is connected through these bioluminescent pathways. As she watched, she began to understand. The creatures of Earth's oceans weren't just individual species fighting for survival. They were part of an interconnected system, a vast living superorganism that could coordinate responses to threats, like alien invasions. Her pod continued to descend, now surrounded by the glowing filaments. At 10,000 meters, she encountered something that would forever change their understanding of Earth's oceans. A massive structure loomed in the darkness, not built but grown. It appeared to be a node in the bioluminescent network, a living structure composed of countless marine organisms working in perfect harmony. As her pod approached, patterns of light rippled through the structure in what could only be described as a form of communication. "Surface, are you receiving this?" she transmitted, her voice trembling with awe. I believe we're being welcomed." The structure's lights pulsed in complex patterns, and to her amazement, her pod's biomimetic systems began to respond, its artificial muscles and neural interfaces resonating with the natural frequencies of the deep-sea network. Through this connection, Miratech began to receive impressions, not quite thoughts, but patterns of information encoded in light and electrical signals. The ocean wasn't just a collection of aggressive creatures that had defeated their invasion. It was a vast, ancient intelligence, evolved over millions of years into something beyond their comprehension. The creatures they had encountered during the invasion, the giant squids, the whales, the coordinated schools of fish, were like antibodies in an immune system, responding to a perceived threat. But this was the brain of that system, a distributed intelligence that stretched through all of Earth's interconnected oceans. As she floated there, surrounded by living light, Miratech understood why their invasion had failed. They had tried to conquer what was essentially a planetary consciousness, one that had evolved perfect adaptations to every possible threat over millions of years. For hours, she remained at that depth, recording everything she could, trying to understand the patterns of communication flowing through the bioluminescent network. When she finally began her ascent, she knew that this discovery would revolutionize not just their understanding of Earth, but their entire approach to xenobiology. Back on the surface, her report to the Council was met with stunned silence. The implications were staggering. Earth's oceans weren't just a resource to be harvested or an obstacle to be overcome, they were a form of intelligence unlike anything they had encountered in their exploration of the galaxy. In the months that followed, more research vessels would arrive, each equipped with biomimetic pods designed to interact with the deep-sea network. They learned to communicate through patterns of light and electrical signals, discovering that the ocean's intelligence had been aware of life beyond Earth long before their invasion. The Zarkanian Scientific Academy established a permanent research station in Earth's orbit, dedicated to studying and learning from the ocean's vast neural network. Their civilization, which had once sought to conquer worlds, began to shift its focus to understanding and preserving the incredible diversity of life they encountered. Miratech's discovery sparked a renaissance in Zarkanian science and philosophy. They began to question their assumptions about intelligence, consciousness, and life itself. The oceans of Earth. The awakening. 10 years after Miratech's groundbreaking discovery of the ocean's neural network, humanity finally learned the truth about their alien visitors and the real reason their planet had been saved. The revelation came not from the Zarkanians, but from the depths of their own oceans. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the bow of the research vessel, Nautilus Prime, a joint human-Zarkanian venture that represented the first official collaboration between the two species. The ship, a hybrid of Earth and alien technology, housed the most advanced marine research facility ever created. "The readings are off the charts today," she said to her Zarkanian colleague, Dr. Kex Lee, whose specialized containment suit allowed him to work alongside humans in Earth's atmosphere. The bioluminescent network is more active than we've ever recorded. The past decade had seen a complete transformation in how both species approached oceanic research. After the Zarkanians revealed themselves to Earth's governments, sharing the truth about their failed invasion and subsequent discoveries, an unprecedented era of scientific cooperation began. "Something's different," Kexley replied, his 4 eyes focused on the holographic display showing the deep-sea activity. "The patterns, they're changing. It's as if the network is preparing for something." The science team had spent years learning to interpret the complex language of light and electrical signals that comprised the ocean's communication system. What had once seemed like random bioluminescent displays now revealed themselves as sophisticated messages, carrying information about everything from water temperature changes to the movements of marine life. But today's patterns were unlike anything they'd seen before. "All stations, this is Dr. Chen," Sarah announced over the ship's comm system. "We're detecting unusual activity in the neural network. Begin recording on all channels." Deep beneath the surface, their array of biomimetic sensors, refined versions of Miratech's original design, transmitted data about a massive surge of activity spreading through the ocean's neural pathways. It started in the Mariana Trench and rapidly expanded outward, like synapses firing in a global brain. "By the Ancient Ones," Kexley whispered, his outer membrane paling. "It's awakening." Before Sarah could ask what he meant, every instrument on the ship went haywire. The ocean around them began to glow with an intense blue-green light that seemed to pulse with purpose. Beneath the waves, millions of marine creatures began moving in perfect synchronization, creating massive patterns visible from space. In research stations across the globe, similar phenomena were being reported. The ocean's neural network, which had previously operated as a loose confederation of connected systems, was suddenly acting with unprecedented unity and purpose. Then, it spoke. Not with words, but with images and sensations transmitted directly through the biomimetic sensors. Every researcher connected to the network, human and Zarkanian alike, received the same message, a history written in light and electrical impulses, telling a story that stretched back millions of years. Long before humans evolved, before the first fish crawled onto land, Earth's oceans had harbored a vast collective consciousness. This entity, which humans would later call Oceanus, had watched the evolution of life on the planet, subtly guiding and protecting the delicate balance of marine ecosystems. When the Zarkanians attempted their invasion, Oceanus had recognized them not as enemies to be destroyed, but as children who had lost their way. The attack on their extraction facilities hadn't been mere animal aggression, it had been a carefully orchestrated demonstration, designed to teach them the value of what they sought to destroy. All this time, Sarah breathed, watching the message unfold in her mind. "We thought we were studying it, but it was studying us. Waiting to see if we were ready." The message continued, revealing that humanity's exploitation of the oceans, pollution, overfishing, habitat destruction, had forced Oceanus to consider more direct intervention. The Zarkanian invasion had provided the perfect opportunity to reveal itself gradually, first to an alien species that could help bridge the gap, and now to humanity itself. As the message filled their minds, both humans and Zarkanians aboard the Nautilus Prime understood that they were witnessing something unprecedented, first contact with a type of intelligence entirely different from their own, one that had evolved not to build civilizations or explore space, but to maintain and protect the delicate web of life in Earth's oceans. "It's offering to teach us," Kexley announced, his voice filled with awe. "Both our species. Everything it knows about adaptation, about survival, about living in harmony with complex ecosystems." The implications were staggering. Oceanus possessed knowledge that could help solve many of the challenges facing both civilizations, from the Zarkanians' water scarcity to humanity's environmental crisis. But more than that, it offered a new way of understanding life itself. Through the neural network, Oceanus shared visions of possible futures. It showed them how the oceans could be healed, how sustainable technologies could be developed by studying marine life, and how the three intelligences, human, Zarkanian, and oceanic, could work together to protect and nurture life throughout the galaxy. But there was a warning too. The message made it clear that Earth's oceans were not a resource to be exploited, but a living system to be protected. Oceanus had the power to defend itself if necessary, as the Zarkanians had learned, but it preferred cooperation to conflict. As the transmission ended, Sarah and Kexley looked at each other, understanding that their work had just begun. The Nautilus Prime would become the first of many vessels dedicated to facilitating communication between terrestrial and marine intelligence. In the months that followed, research teams around the world worked to establish permanent communication links with Oceanus. The organism shared its vast knowledge gradually, careful not to overwhelm its new partners with too much information at once. One of the first gifts it offered was the secret of pressure adaptation, the biological mechanisms that allowed deep-sea creatures to survive in extreme conditions. This knowledge helped the Zarkanians develop new technologies for water extraction on uninhabited worlds, solving their resource crisis without threatening existing ecosystems. For humanity, Oceanus provided insights into climate regulation and marine ecosystem restoration, offering hope for reversing centuries of environmental damage. It taught them about the intricate balance of oceanic systems and how to work within natural cycles rather than against them. But perhaps most importantly, Oceanus taught both species about different forms of consciousness. It showed them that intelligence could exist in forms they had never imagined, not just in individual brains or artificial networks, but in the collective activity of entire ecosystems. The awakening of Oceanus marked the beginning of a new era for all three intelligences. Humanity learned to see their oceans not as a resource to be exploited but as a wise elder with millions of years of evolutionary knowledge. The Zarkanians found a new purpose, transforming from conquerors to students of life's endless adaptability. And Oceanus, after eons of silent observation, finally had partners who could help protect and preserve the incredible diversity of life it had nurtured for so long. Together, they began working toward a future where technology and nature could coexist in harmony, guided by the ancient wisdom of Earth's oceans. As Sarah watched the sun set over the glowing waters, she realized that this was just the beginning. The real challenge would be helping both her own species and the Zarkanians learn to think like the ocean, not in terms of years or decades, but in the long rhythms of evolutionary time. But with Oceanus as their teacher, anything seemed possible. The crisis. Not everyone on Earth welcomed the revelation of Oceanus's existence with open arms. 15 years after the failed Zarkanian invasion, humanity faced its own internal conflict over the ocean's consciousness, leading to a crisis that would test the limits of their newfound alliance. Admiral James Morrison stood in the Pentagon Situation Room, staring at satellite footage of unusual activity in the South China Sea. Several nations had rejected the authority of the Global Ocean Protection Treaty, continuing their deep-sea mining operations despite warnings from both the scientific community and Oceanus itself. "They're calling it the Deep Sea Revolution," his intelligence officer reported. "A coalition of corporations and nations arguing that we've surrendered our sovereignty to an alien influence. They're planning to launch a coordinated mining operation across multiple oceanic regions." Morrison had served as humanity's military liaison to both the Zarkanians and Oceanus for the past decade. He understood better than most the delicate balance they were trying to maintain. Have they seen the simulation data? What happened in the Mediterranean test site? 3 months earlier, an unauthorized mining operation had triggered a localized response from Oceanus's defense mechanisms. The result had been catastrophic, not because of any aggressive action from the ocean consciousness, but because the disruption to its neural network had caused widespread chaos in marine ecosystems. Dr. Sarah Chen, now director of the International Oceanic Communication Initiative, IOCI, appeared on the secure holographic display, her face grave. "Admiral, we're detecting massive disruptions in the bioluminescent network. Oceanus is agitated." Agitated might be an understatement, added Kexley, who had become the Zarkanian ambassador to Earth. "The patterns we're seeing suggest a full-scale immune response is imminent." If these mining operations proceed, Oceanus may respond in ways we can't predict or control. The crisis had been building for years. While many embraced the knowledge and benefits that came from cooperation with Oceanus, others saw it as a threat to human autonomy. Conspiracy theories spread about mind control through seawater, despite all evidence to the contrary. Economic interests, particularly those invested in traditional resource extraction, pushed back against the new restrictions on oceanic exploitation. "We're picking up movement," announced the radar operator. Multiple vessels moving into position around the proposed mining sites. "They're deploying equipment." Before Morrison could respond, alerts began flooding in from across the globe. Temperature anomalies appeared in every major ocean, and massive schools of marine life began moving in coordinated patterns. The entire bioluminescent network lit up with unprecedented activity. "This is it," Sarah's voice was tense. "Oceanus is initiating a defensive response. But it's different from anything we've seen before. The patterns, they're not aggressive. They're adaptive." Instead of attacking the mining vessels directly, Oceanus demonstrated why it had survived for millions of years. The ocean around the mining sites began to change at a molecular level. Bacterial colonies, directed by the neural network, started breaking down the mining equipment's metal components at an accelerated rate. Bioluminescent organisms created electromagnetic fields that disrupted the ship's navigation systems. Countless tiny adjustments in temperature and current created conditions that made operations impossible. But the response didn't stop there. Through the communication channels established over the years, Oceanus began sharing visions, not just with the scientific teams, but with everyone on the mining vessels. It showed them the true cost of their actions, the collapsed ecosystems, the broken neural pathways, the cascading effects that would eventually reach land and affect human coastal populations. "It's not fighting back," Kexley observed with growing understanding. "It's teaching." The visions weren't threats or warnings, but education. Oceanus showed alternative methods of obtaining the resources they sought, techniques learned from millions of years of evolution. It demonstrated how human technology could be adapted to work in harmony with marine systems rather than against them. In the Situation Room, Morrison watched as vessel after vessel halted their operations. The crews, shaken by their direct contact with Oceanus, began reporting experiences that would later be described as life-changing. Many became the strongest advocates for ocean protection. But the crisis wasn't over. As news of the event spread, political tensions escalated. Some nations accused others of surrendering Earth's resources to alien influence, despite the fact that Oceanus had evolved on Earth long before humans existed. Sarah Chin called an emergency session of the United Nations, where she presented a groundbreaking proposal. "We've been thinking about this all wrong," she announced to the assembled delegates. "We're not choosing between human progress and ocean preservation. Oceanus is offering us a path to both." She revealed new data showing how cooperation with the ocean consciousness had already led to technological breakthroughs in medicine, energy production, and environmental restoration. Companies that had adapted their technologies to work in harmony with marine ecosystems were outperforming their competitors. The Zarkanians, through Ambassador Kexley, shared their own experience of transformation from would-be conquerors to students of Earth's oceans. They demonstrated how their civilization had flourished since abandoning their extractive practices in favor of sustainable technologies inspired by marine life. "The choice before us isn't whether to fight or submit to Oceanus," Sarah concluded. "It's whether to learn from the most successful planetary management system Earth has ever produced." As if in response to her words, the oceans began to glow with unprecedented beauty. Bioluminescent displays painted the night skies around the world, visible from space, a reminder of the incredible complexity and beauty of the system humanity was trying to understand. The crisis marked a turning point in human history. The failed attempt to defy Oceanus led to a deeper appreciation of what the ocean consciousness offered. Nations that had resisted cooperation began to see the benefits of working with rather than against the marine intelligence. New industries emerged, based on biomimetic technologies inspired by ocean life. The Zarkanians shared their advanced understanding of pressure adaptation, leading to revolutionary developments in underwater construction and exploration. Human scientists, working in concert with Oceanus, began developing solutions to long-standing environmental challenges. But perhaps most importantly, the crisis forced humanity to confront its place in Earth's broader ecosystem. The ocean consciousness had shown them that true power lay not in domination, but in adaptation and cooperation. Evolution. 20 years after the Zarkanian invasion attempt, humanity stood on the brink of its greatest transformation. The Mariana Research Center, a stunning structure of bioengineered coral and advanced alien technology, floated above the deepest part of Earth's oceans. Inside, Dr. Sarah Chen, now in her 60s, prepared for humanity's most ambitious project yet. Integration protocols are ready, announced Dr. Marcus Wong, her protégé and lead biotechnology researcher. The symphonic chambers are stabilized and awaiting the first volunteers. The chambers represented the culmination of 2 decades of cooperation between humans, Zarkanians, and Oceanus. They were designed to do something previously thought impossible: create a permanent biological interface between human consciousness and the ocean's vast neural network. Ambassador Kexley, his aged membrane now bearing the distinctive patterns of a Zarkanian elder, observed the preparations with all 4 eyes. To think, we once sought to drain these oceans. Now we stand ready to join their consciousness. The integration project had grown from a startling discovery made 3 years earlier. While studying the deep-sea bioluminescent networks, researchers had found that Oceanus wasn't just a planetary intelligence, it was an evolutionary mechanism, capable of incorporating new forms of consciousness into its neural matrix. Admiral Morrison, watching the last mining vessels withdraw from the South China Sea, understood that they had witnessed not just the resolution of a crisis, but the birth of a new era in human development. The oceans, which had once seemed like humanity's last frontier to conquer, had instead become their greatest teacher. As the bioluminescent displays continued around the world, a new message pulsed through the neural network, not a warning or a lesson this time, but an invitation. Oceanus was offering humanity a deeper partnership, a chance to evolve beyond their terrestrial limitations and join in the ancient dance of life beneath the waves. The crisis had tested the limits of human-ocean cooperation, but in doing so, it had revealed possibilities that neither side had imagined. As humanity stepped back from the brink of conflict, they found themselves on the threshold of an evolutionary leap, guided by the wisdom of Earth's most ancient intelligence. Evolution. 20 years after the Zarkanian invasion attempt, humanity stood on the brink of its greatest transformation. The Mariana Research Center, a stunning structure of bioengineered coral and advanced alien technology, floated above the deepest part of Earth's oceans. Inside, Dr. Sarah Chen, now in her 60s, prepared for humanity's most ambitious project yet. Integration protocols are ready, announced Dr. Marcus Wong, her protégé and lead biotechnology researcher. The symphonic chambers are stabilized and awaiting the first volunteers. The chambers represented the culmination of 2 decades of cooperation between humans, Zarkanians, and Oceanus. They were designed to do something previously thought impossible: create a permanent biological interface between human consciousness and the ocean's vast neural network. Ambassador Kexley, his aged membrane now bearing the distinctive patterns of a Zarkanian elder, observed the preparations with all 4 eyes. To think, we once sought to drain these oceans. Now we stand ready to join their consciousness. The integration project had grown from a startling discovery made 3 years earlier. While studying the deep-sea bioluminescent networks, researchers had found that Oceanus wasn't just a planetary intelligence, it was an evolutionary mechanism, capable of incorporating new forms of consciousness into its neural matrix. First group of volunteers, please proceed to your designated chambers, Sarah announced over the facility's comm system. The volunteers, a carefully selected group of scientists, philosophers, and environmental experts from around the world, had undergone months of preparation for this moment. Among them was Dr. Miratek, now the most respected xenobiologist in the Zarkanian Science Council. Her groundbreaking work on biomimetic interfaces had made the integration project possible. She would be joining the first group, fulfilling a dream she'd harbored since her first descent into the Mariana Trench. The symphonic chambers looked like translucent pods filled with a bioluminescent fluid derived from deep-sea organisms. Each was connected to both the ocean's neural network and a sophisticated biocomputer that would help translate between human and oceanic consciousness. Remember, Sarah addressed the volunteers, this isn't just an experiment in communication. What we're attempting today is the next step in human evolution, a willing fusion with Earth's most ancient intelligence. The risks were well understood. Previous attempts at smaller-scale neural links had shown that connecting with Oceanus's consciousness was overwhelming at first. The ocean thought in patterns of currents and chemical gradients, in the slow pulse of geological time and the rapid flutter of plankton blooms. It took extensive training for human minds to adapt to its rhythms. As the chambers activated, bioluminescent patterns rippled through the facility. The neural network had extended tendrils of light up through the water column, eager to embrace its new participants. Oceanus had been preparing for this moment too, gradually adapting its communications to be more compatible with terrestrial consciousness. The first sign that something extraordinary was happening came from Miratek's chamber. The bioluminescent fluid began pulsing in perfect synchronization with her brain waves, creating patterns that spread through the neural network like ripples in a pond. One by one, the other chambers lit up as their occupants achieved integration. The facility's sensors recorded an exponential increase in neural activity as each human and Zarkanian consciousness merged with the ocean's vast intelligence. Through the observation windows, Sarah watched in awe as the volunteers' expressions shifted from concentration to wonder. Their individual consciousness remained intact, but they were now part of something far larger, a planetary mind that had evolved over millions of years. The first transmitted thoughts from the integrated volunteers were beyond anything they had expected. They weren't just communicating with Oceanus, they were experiencing the ocean's memories, stretching back to the very beginning of life on Earth. It's incredible, Miratek's voice came through the comm system, filled with emotion. We can see everything. The first cells dividing in ancient seas, the evolution of complex life, the great extinctions and recoveries. The ocean remembers it all. But it wasn't just the past they could access. Through Oceanus's distributed consciousness, they could feel the present state of every major marine ecosystem on Earth. They could sense the movements of whale pods in the Arctic, the spawning of coral in the Great Barrier Reef, the deep-sea thermal vents teeming with life. More extraordinary still were the glimpses of possible futures. Oceanus's consciousness operated on multiple timescales simultaneously, modeling potential evolutionary paths thousands or even millions of years ahead. The volunteers found themselves immersed in visions of Earth's possible futures, each one shaped by the choices being made in the present. We understand now, Dr. Wong transmitted, his voice filled with awe. Oceanus isn't just a planetary intelligence, it's a bridge between temporal scales. It thinks in evolutionary time while acting in the present. The implications were staggering. Through this interface, humanity could finally grasp the long-term consequences of their actions on a planetary scale. They could see how small changes in ocean chemistry would ripple through time, affecting evolution itself. The Zarkanians, through their integrated volunteers, discovered something equally profound. Their own world's oceans, though long since depleted, had once harbored a similar consciousness. The chemical traces still existed in their ancient seabeds, a dormant neural network that could potentially be revived using what they'd learned from Earth. As the first integration session continued, something unexpected began to happen. The combined consciousness of humans, Zarkanians, and Oceanus started generating new possibilities, evolutionary paths that none of them could have conceived of alone. They saw visions of cities that grew like coral reefs, technology that evolved like living organisms, and spacecraft designed according to principles learned from deep-sea creatures. They glimpsed new forms of consciousness emerging from the synthesis of biological and technological evolution. This is why Oceanus called to us, Sarah realized, watching the data streams flow across her screens. Not just to protect Earth's oceans, but to help life itself take its next evolutionary leap. The integration project marked the beginning of a new chapter in the story of life on Earth. Through the permanent interface with Oceanus, humanity gained a perspective that spanned millions of years, while the ocean consciousness benefited from the innovative creativity of younger species. The Zarkanians, once would-be conquerors, became key partners in this evolutionary journey. Their experience with interstellar travel combined with their newfound understanding of oceanic consciousness opened up possibilities for spreading life to other worlds, not through conquest, but through careful cultivation and respect for existing ecosystems. As Sarah watched the first group of volunteers emerge from their chambers, forever changed by their experience, she understood that this was just the beginning. The failed invasion 20 years ago hadn't just saved Earth's oceans, it had set in motion a chain of events that would reshape the very nature of consciousness in the galaxy. Deep beneath the waves, Oceanus continued its ancient work of nurturing and guiding life's evolution. But now it was no longer alone. With each new mind that joined its neural network, the possibilities for life's future expanded. Humanity had found its place not as conquerors of nature, but as partners in the greatest evolutionary experiment in Earth's history. And somewhere in the depths of the Mariana Trench, where it all began, new patterns of bioluminescence pulsed through the darkness, a symphony of light and consciousness, telling the story of three species who learned to evolve together, guided by the wisdom of Earth's oceans.